Hello and thank you for watching another SSD test for the PS5 here on NAS Compares. Much like the other videos that we've done so far, these were tested during the beta phase of the software, and although everyone now can take advantage of M.2 SSDs on the PS5, it's worth highlighting that this recording was made during the beta phase of events, so there may be slight things in there that I refer to that aren't applicable now. All of the SSDs during the beta and the full SSD release work exactly the same. There's no difference in performance, but I did think it was important to highlight this fact before you start today's video. So let's start and run that intro. Hello and welcome back, and that's right, it's another test of an SSD for the PS5. This is our second test of the Titanium Micro TH7175. This is kind of an enterprise grade SSD. If I lean forward here and bring up the official page, we're able to take a quick look at this SSD, and again, this is an SSD that I would argue is in the top 5 kind of sequential performance read-write SSDs out there. It's also got 7 years of manufacturer's warranty available if you register. And moving down, it is an impressive SSD available in 1, 2 and 4 TB. And although the 4 TB is by far the highest performing one, as you can see there, today we are utilizing the 1 TB model here, which has still got an impressive sequential read maximum of 7,150 megabytes per second. Now, if you have watched my test before, you'll know that in this stage of testing, the games we're going to be looking at are Borderlands 3, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, In Rays of the Light, Subnautica, and Oddworld Soulstorm. Also, this is part 2, and I do recommend that you go back and view part 1, because in part 1 we did the SSD benchmark from the PlayStation itself to get its own reading, as well as some transferring of data back and forth, and a lot more background on the SSD. For now, we're just focusing on the games. So again, although I've already conducted the move, if we go into the information section here, we can see it's stored on the M.2 SSD. And indeed, if we head into the settings menu here, go into storage, we can see the M.2 SSD there, and there is our TH7175 SSD 1TB, which has already got a pile of data already installed on it. So for now, let's go with our first game, which is Borderlands 3. And again, with this game, we're checking two things. First thing we're looking at is how quickly it loads the game to the title screen. Borderlands 3 has a notoriously slow loading time. And after that, we're going to be doing a straight load from a save game. But for now, let's count in at 3, 2, 1. Ignore that noise there in the background of the PlayStation. This isn't a disc version of the game, but there is a disc in the system, and it automatically always spins the disc up. But for now, we're seeing how quickly it loads the game. The real key thing we're looking for here is the bit when Claptrap is walking across the screen. Now, anyone that played this game on the PS4 knows that the loading on this was interminable, and the PS5 upgrade kept things a lot quicker. So for now, what we're looking for is how much of Claptrap we're going to see on the left-hand side of the screen. The less, the better. Ah, perfect. That might actually have been the fastest SSD yet. Fair play. Again, we'll have to check when we do our big face-down comparison, but for now, that might have been the fastest SSD that we've seen yet loading this game. But for now, let's make our way into this. Okay, we're going to go into the load game. We're not going to include this bit because it's got online connectivity with a server, and therefore it slows things down. But for now, we can go to continue game, and we're going to compare how quickly they load in 3, 2, 1. And here we are loading into Ascension Bluffs. Again, we're seeing how quickly it loads the game, but also we are looking at pushing it what the assets are on screen. So let's get that up there. Let's go straight into deploying a vehicle and push this. Again, can't stand the driving in Borderlands 3. It's one of the few things about this game that I do not like. For now, accidentally press circle, not square. It's super annoying. But for now, let's make our way through. Again, we're looking to see if we can push this to a point where textures aren't loading correctly, or we're seeing assets being dropped in willy-nilly and not organically. But again, still feels like it's running pretty darn well there. No slowdown from what I'm seeing as we make our way through transitional elements of this map. Made our way to the end of it there. Carry on. And I think for now, that's running fine for me. I would call that a success from what I'm seeing. And I think for now, what we can do start making our way into our next game, which is of course Star Wars. So let's come out of it there. We're going to be no break screening here. We're just going straight in every time now. So again, we'll go into the game library, find our game here. So there is Jedi Fallen Order. So for now, let's go into the game. This isn't a game that we're going to be bench testing for its on-screen loading presence. We just can't. It goes on for way too long. There's way too many publisher logos. There's connection with the EA server. There are just so many variables. Why loading this game straight from the PlayStation menu and trying to measure it is just hugely inefficient. So we're bench testing this, loading a save file from the title screen. This game, this is the PS5 version, of course, and again, the reason we include this game is there is a lot of kind of world render. This is very top-ended in its loading, Jedi Fallen Order. A lot of other games do a lot of kind of surrounding world creation, and this game does that to a slight degree, but it definitely doesn't do it as much as a game like Borderlands would, or even Doom Eternal in the previous testing. This game is incredibly front-ended in its loading, as we'll see now in 3, 2, 1. And within this game, the loading screens, comparatively of course, are incredibly long. The PS4 version of this game, the loading was just incredible, and that didn't even have the heavy assets this game has. But for now, we're making our way into the game, and as we make our way in, here we are, the same space we've done before. That felt pretty comparable. I don't think there was too much difference there in the speed at which it done it. We'll make sure the lightsaber stays out just for the pure lighting around the area that we're in to make sure we can see everything. But for now, no T-poses that we've seen before, which is good. For those that have followed the other videos, you'll know that this area actually had some early T-pose activity that was very surprising that was a thing. But for now, I think that's running absolutely fine. The assets are running how I would like. Sorry about the clicking of the controller there. But for now, let's make our way back to the meditation spot. And from there, we can load into a challenge mission, which we will be utilizing in order to kind of get the game to force load in a bunch of assets in the background. So let's carry on there, make our way to the next area. And again, from here, it's very slow going. All the kind of loading is right there at the top every time, rather than hidden in the background too much. That said, there's a lot of world-to-world loading in some of the transitional elements when you're changing between planets, but again, very hard to track those in the loading because there's a lot of custom dialogue that pops up that slows things down. But for now, we're going into the custom challenge, and from here we're going to be loading the Kashyyyk mission, which has got completely different assets to what we've been doing for the most part. And from there, hopefully we'll get some idea about the difference. But for now, 1, 2, 3. Loading up this mission now. We're going to stick on it for a couple of rounds just to make sure the game has an opportunity to load some stuff in and see if there's any difficulty. Again, we will be doing a big comparison of all of these SSDs coming very, very soon. But for now, I think that's fine. And again, everything's moving fine. The world elements around us seem to be absolutely fine there. I think I'd be happy with that. To be honest, if this was running on my internal disk, I'm seeing no drop in frame rate, no drop in textures. There isn't going to be a lot of resource popping in the background because this is a small contained environment. And of course that's been done on purpose because they tend to introduce a lot of enemy and AI assets in this area. But for now, yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I think we can make our way onto the next game, which is of course in Rays of Light, a lovely little indie title that, again, if you haven't played it, yes, it's one of those walking simulators, but I would still recommend it. And again, this isn't a game that we're measuring directly from the loading screen. We have got 2 individual load saves here, one in a small contained environment where kind of close-up asset management and low, mid to high texture swap is quite important, but also we have another save spot that's in a far, far bigger open world environment just outside the main building that I think for an indie title, they aren't, they haven't got the tools necessarily to manage kind of hidden background loading as much as as a premium title. They still do an incredible job, of course, but generally you find a lot of industry techniques can be engineered on those bigger titles. But for now, we're going to be loading the third save here. So 3, 2, 1. Should load pretty quickly. We should be in like a shed bunker area here, so we can make our way forward into the open area. And again, no drop in FPS, absolutely fine there, no issues whatsoever. Again, the world is there, the lighting effects are there. Again, we can transition through all of these derelict buildings here, absolutely fine. And what we're going to do is move our way through the building and back out again in case the game's using any kind of swap elements there. And as we do this, we're going to be keenly looking out for low textures being introduced or not swapped out for higher res ones as we grow closer to them. But again, seemingly running fine, this indie title here, so we can have a little look around. Things are absolutely fine as we make our way through. Have a look up. Everything's running good. Again, this is the run button being held for those that are wondering why we aren't moving faster. I did mention walking simulator. But for now, the game is seemingly running at top speed with no texture problems and running exactly how I would like it to run if it was running on the internal SSD. But for now, let's load into a second save. This is going to be save 4. This is the internal area. So let's go for it now in 3, 2, 1. Again, this is an area that we talked about before. Before we go forward, we can make our way back into the radiation area here. Now, there's a lot of individual pop elements here. You'll see that sometimes there's a drop in frame rate around here. We're not suffering it too much as some of these extra kind of physics dependent objects are introduced. There was a slight drop in frame rate there, but nothing untoward. If we make our way around, have a little look around the whole surrounding area. Again, I'm trying not to be as hard as on drops of frame rate on this particular game, as I know we have highlighted it previously, but again, this is a smaller title and not accessible to, and doesn't have access to a lot of the resource management of other titles. But still, nonetheless, as we move around, we've got lots of those environmental effects happening now. We're not seeing any of the texture drops that we've seen before. We're still seeing all of these assets in high texture as we're close to them. It's not unable to pop out those other textures. The lighting effect there is built into the game. If we move along, and again, these tiles are a great example of low to mid to high texture swapping. But again, we're seeing no problems there whatsoever. And for me, I'd say this has been a success for me here. And I would call that, a box tick for the Titan Micro drive, or the Titanium Micro even. But for now, let's go on to our second to last game, which is of course Subnautica. Subnautica, we're loading a save game here. This has been one of the hardest to track games of the games that we have been testing. This is the PS5 upgraded version. And of course, with this game, it has kind of that sandbox environment going on there. There's lots of assets being drawn in that you may never even see. There's a lot of distance texture handling as well. But again, we're doing the open mode here. So we're going for a new game, or we're going for creative mode. And from here, we're going to load in and just monitor the assets being loaded into the game. And obviously some of the texture swapping as well. But for now, 3, 2, 1. And again, we've got that lovely little loading screen on the left there, giving us real-time information about the assets being brought in and the loading of the game, something that the noughties and the 90s really did enjoy doing for PC games, and I do dearly miss it. It just made me know what was loading, and if there was a problem, what exactly it was. But for now, we are now in the game. For now, we're going to go up instead of down for a change. We're going to add ourselves a little bit of momentum as well, so we have a little look around the surrounding environment here in the middle of sodding nowhere. As you can see, there are no assets to worry about here at the top, but if we go down, we can then use this momentum here to explore the area around us. You may notice that we are moving faster on the left hand side of the screen than we are on the right, and a lot of that is because of that momentum that I've done there at the beginning of the game. And remember, the main activity here is to try to push in as much asset loading as possible as we do this. So we're moving as fast as we can through the world, forcing the game to have to work harder with that SSD, whether it's working harder to introduce those additional assets as we make our way through that it has to draw in and out of the game, or because it's having to do that texture swap in there as long distance objects grow a great deal closer to the camera, the player's POV. But gotta say, it's running fine here. We've got no drop in frame rate, no drop in kind of the stuff being created there. That thing looks vicious as hell. But for now, as we make our way deeper into the arguably unsafe areas of Subnautica, a game that I am looking forward to properly playing when I get some downtime between these videos, I think for now, I would call this a success, and ultimately, I'm getting another box to be ticked for the Titanium Micro TH7175 as we make our way into our last game, which is of course Oddworld Soulstorm. Now I know that Oddworld may seem like an odd choice for bench testing SSD performance, as it is a 2.5D game, but as we load into it there, Oddworld Soulstorm still has a lot of set pieces. It has a lot of activity there in the background, a lot of lighting effects as well, and a lot of AI in the background. So that's why we've included it in this. And of course, it is a PS5 exclusive title that I know a lot of you do quite like after, of course, the incredible Abe's Odyssey. But for now, let's make our way into the title screen. And this is a straightforward load comparison here, direct from the title screen, side by side. Let's go in 3, 2, 1. Again, should be nice and quick, shouldn't be too problematic here. And I think for now we can push forward on this. And here we are in the game. We've got the assets all around us and it's all running fine. I know it doesn't come across as well as we might like there in the capture, but it's still pretty darn good. And although the frame rate is conflicting between the card and the PlayStation, hence that slight pixelation, I think we can overlook that because we're looking at the greater scheme of the loading here. And again, those lighting effects, the kind of set pieces there all being triggered, there's still a lot of activity here that's being done, and the SSD seems to be running absolutely fine there as we go through them. And for now, we can go ahead and just maybe double back to see if the game's going to have any difficulty keeping these assets going. But for now, let's see. Probably try not to catch fire there. And see if the game has destroyed any of these assets in order to free up resources. But it doesn't look like the case. They've all kind of stayed there in the background. You can see a greater density of a lot of those objects there in the background of the screen as we do this, in fact. But for now, I'm going to call that a success. And let's go ahead and make our way back to the title screen there. Poor old Abe there, copying it one. And we'll move these games back onto the internal PS5 SSD as we discuss everything we've seen today. So let's go ahead and select those games. Let's move them over to the internal SSD. Again, this is our second test. We still have a third test of the Titanium Micro SSD, but for now, I'd say it's banking up there with the best right now. We've looked at the best of our list being the WD Black SN850, the Firecuda 530, and the Samsung 980 Pro. But right now, this is sneaking into that fourth spot. It's challenging that Sabrent Rocket 4 Plus. And I think if I do another comparison soon, based on our third tier testing, where we're going to be looking at games like No Man's Sky, Rocket League, and stuff like that, and maybe even Spider-Man, these are the games that I think will decide whether this SSD can move into the top tier or it's going to remain in that second tier. It's a great SSD, a little bit more expensive than most, but you are paying for quite a high-spec SSD there that has more enterprise users in mind. So think longevity more than anything. But thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, do stay tuned for part 3. And again, click like if you've enjoyed the video so I know you guys like these. I know they're repetitive, I get it. But at the same time, I've got to test the same games on all these SSDs to keep things fair. Again, if you want to learn more, click subscribe or the bell to be notified about these SSD videos as they go live. I will be testing as many SSDs as possible before the Sony PlayStation beta software comes out of beta and into full release, so everyone knows the best SSDs and indeed heatsinks to buy. They're all linked in the description. And of course, take advantage of the free advice section over on NAS Compares. It's completely free. It's manned by 2 humans, me and Eddie the web guy. We answer all your queries on SSD, hard drives, Thunderbolt, NAS, DAS, you name it. Home or business, we've got an ear to lend you. It is free. We don't do anything with your email. That's about it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.